When the Battle of Liberty Place ended, New Orleans didn't fall apart. There weren't mass arrests, there weren't emergency courts, there wasn't a serious public response. Life in the city, well, it just kept going. And that quiet is often mistaken for healing. But sometimes quiet doesn't mean things are better. Sometimes it means nothing is being dealt with. Because after political violence, what matters isn't just who takes control in the moment. It's what happens next. And in 1874, almost nothing did. This wasn't the first time violence against democracy had been met with forgiveness instead of punishment. After the Civil War, most former Confederates were never charged with treason. An armed rebellion against the United States ended not with accountability, but with widespread pardons. President Andrew Johnson called this reconciliation. But when forgiveness comes without consequences, people learn something from that. They learn that rebellion, if it's done by the right people, isn't really treated as a crime. That lesson didn't stop in 1865. It carried forward. By the time of the Battle of Liberty Place, white supremacist groups weren't guessing about how the system would respond. They already had experience. They were operating in a country that had shown them more than once that violence would likely be forgiven if it put things back the way white leaders wanted. The White League didn't hide. They didn't work in secret. They trained openly, and they organized in public. That confidence didn't come from ignorance of the law. It came from knowing how the law was usually applied. People were killed, an elected government was attacked, armed men tried to take control of the city, and still, there were no serious prosecutions. The federal government had the authority to act, but the will to act was fading. Reconstruction was starting to be seen as a burden, Black political participation as something negotiable. Once again, violence against democracy was met not with justice, but with inaction, and doing nothing sent a message. History isn't just about what happens, it's about what people take away from it. The lesson here was pretty clear. If violence is used to take back power, and that power is held long enough, punishment probably isn't coming. The rules don't apply the same way. This wasn't just a lesson for extremists. It spread. Violence didn't automatically make you illegitimate. In some cases, it helped restore your standing. For Black citizens, the lesson was even clearer and far more dangerous. Political participation came with conditions. Legal protection couldn't be counted on. If white citizens could attack the government itself and face no real consequences, there was little reason to believe Black citizens would be protected when they were targeted for voting, organizing, or holding office. This is how intimidation works without constant violence. Once the message is understood, it doesn't need to be repeated every day. After Liberty Place, open violence wasn't always necessary anymore. The path had already been cleared. Disenfranchisement can now happen through law, not gunfire. Poll taxes, literacy tests, complicated registration rules, all described as neutral, all enforced selectively. Violence opened the door, and the law kept it closed. Years later, the city made its position clear. In 1891, New Orleans built a monument to honor the Battle of Liberty Place. Not to mourn the dead, not to warn future generations, to celebrate it. The inscription openly praised white supremacy. That wasn't subtle. It was a lesson carved into the landscape. It told future generations that violence used to restore white control wasn't something to be ashamed of. This is how violence gets cleaned up after the fact, not by denying it, but by changing how it's remembered. When monuments honor those who carried out violence and erase the people harmed by it, the story shifts. Violence becomes order, harm becomes stability, and that story lasts much longer than the event itself. When violence against Black communities and against democratic institutions go unpunished, or is later celebrated, it teaches something dangerous. It teaches entitlement to power. It teaches that accountability is optional. And it teaches that order matters more than justice when justice threatens existing hierarchies. Liberty Place isn't just a story from 1874. It's part of a much longer pattern where white violence is minimized or excused, and Black resistance is treated as criminal. This didn't start in New Orleans, and it doesn't end here. The aftermath matters because it shows how inequality can survive without constant force. What the aftermath of Liberty Place shows isn't just a failure from the past. It's a habit. When violence carried out by powerful groups is met with silence, delay, or forgiveness, people learn that power can be taken first and justified later. Over time, that lesson starts to feel normal. It shapes who gets believed, who gets protected, and who is expected to accept harm for the sake of stability. This is how injustice repeats without needing the same names or the same year. Not because history repeats itself, but because accountability was never made unavoidable. When a society refuses to punish attacks on democracy and on Black communities, it doesn't just fail the people harmed in that moment. It teaches the future what will be tolerated.